Chicago. It's a city of dreamers, builders, champions. Home to the Chicago Blackhawks, a franchise built on perseverance.
Sweet taste of their first victory celebration in 23 years.
Driven by innovation, like Stan Mikita's radically curved stick and Glenn Hall's butterfly saves. For 100 years, that's right, 100 years. The Blackhawks haven't just played the game.
Battle toward the slot, shoots, he scores! Dennis Savard!
They've revolutionized it.
Darryl Sutter over the line, shoot, he scores! Sutter! Hawks win! Hawks win!
Welcome to Center Ice. That's right here is where the Chicago Blackhawks dropped the puck for the first time at the old Chicago Coliseum. And since then, the team has been leaving a legacy in a town that's already given you the skyscraper, spray paint, Cracker Jack, roller derby, zippers, the electric blues, and even blood banks. That just goes to show you, a city like Chicago can't just give you any old kind of hockey team. But it's like I always say, everything dope about America, well, it comes from the hardest working city on earth, Chicago.
I remember coming in here for my first prospect camp at 18 years old. I never been to a city this big before in my life, and just kind of amazed. I thought at the time I was a little intimidated.
Chicago's Loop sits at the center of the local sports landscape. On the north side, you got the Cubs. On the south side, you got the Sox. On the lake, you have the Bears. And out west, the Bulls and our beloved Blackhawks. The Hawks have been calling West Madison Street home since 1929. That year, when the Blackhawks moved into the Chicago Stadium, Prohibition is in full swing, Al Capone runs the streets, and professional hockey is still new to the city. But in 1929, the roar of the crowd met the chill of the ice, and a new chapter in Chicago sports was born. Now, let's say you're not just a fan, you're a player. You walk out into the ice in wool uniforms. Yes, actual wool. Your equipment, nowhere near what players have today. Your gloves are thin, your skates are stiff leather, and helmets, forget about it. A hard slap shot to the head means one thing. You're probably missing the rest of the game, or worse. A century later, the Chicago Blackhawks are one of the most legendary franchises in hockey history. So, just what makes our Hawks so original? Let me tell you about the banana blade. It all started with a broken stick during a routine practice. Chicago Blackhawks legend Stan Mikita accidentally split the flat blade of his hockey stick into a jagged V shape.
And I heard a. So I looked down and the thing is still stuck in there. I pulled it out, and my blade now is in this shape. Instead of being straight, it was kind of a L shape, half L shape. Because there were 21 stairs going downstairs, I would have to go down and get another stick, come back up with those 21 stairs, and I really didn't feel like doing it. So in anger, I shot a puck against the boards.
He was startled by the amount of velocity that this generated and the number of different spins he was able to put on the puck.
And Bobby was the first one to ask, what in the world is that? So I told him the story, and I had to make him one in the left-hand curve. And his first shot almost hit the organ.
Soon, he and teammate Bobby Hull were intentionally warping their wooden blades into deep curves by soaking them in hot water and bending them under door jambs at night. The result? The now famous banana blade. At first, rival players mocked the bizarre new sticks, but Hull and Mikita quickly turned into the NHL's most dangerous scoring duo, and they started a brand new trend. Within years, more than half the league had adopted the curved blade, from subtle bends to Mikita's wild inch-and-a-half hook. The innovation didn't just boost speed and control, it changed hockey's entire style of play. Players could now fake out goalies, scoop the puck off the boards, and whip shots with deadly spin and precision.
They were trying to figure out a way to score more goals, and it worked.
To this day, Stan Mikita leads the Blackhawks in games played, assists, points, and seasons played. And Bobby Hull holds all-time Hawks records for goals, hat tricks, shots on goals, and game winners. Man, that boy was clutch.
Bobby Hull was the most exciting hockey player I've ever seen. He would wind up around behind the net and go up the ice, throwing offensive players off his back, and then fire a slap shot that was probably 110 miles an hour. He was the first player in the NHL to score more than 50 goals in a season, and he did that 4 times.
10 minutes into the second period, Hull eases himself near the net to grab the opportunity set up by Stapleton. It's number 53 for Bobby Hull. You might say he's skating his way into the Hull of Fame.
Thank you very kindly, folks all over the world.
But Stosh and the Golden Jet were not the only Blackhawks thinking outside of the box. Let's look at Blackhawks' innovation by the numbers. 10,000. That's the altitude and feet that the Blackhawks were cruising along on March 18, 1940, when they became the first ever NHL team to charter a flight. That first flight to Toronto to take on the Maple Leafs in the Stanley Cup playoffs modernized the NHL. Suddenly, teams could travel on their own schedules, reducing fatigue and maximizing recovery time. This innovation gave players more consistency and comfort on the road, directly impacting performance and ultimately allowing fans to see them play more often back in home, sweet home, Chicago. Though hockey and cricket might seem worlds apart, the two sports share a surprising connection. The term hat trick actually originated in cricket, believe it or not, but it made its way into ice hockey thanks to Blackhawks forward Alex Coletta.
There was a hat store in Toronto. So Coletta's in there one day before a Saturday night game against the Maple Leafs. He was admiring a hat, which at the time, I believe cost between $7 and $10 Canadian dollars. And he said, I love it, but I don't have the money. So the proprietor turned to him and said, you score 3 goals tonight, you'll get it for free. So of course, lo and behold, Coletta scores 4, gets his hat.
Alex Coletta's hat trick is a legendary part of Blackhawks history because it sparked a tradition of fans throwing hats on the ice, forever linking Chicago to one of hockey's most iconic celebrations.
The end of last season, there had been 300 Blackhawks hat tricks.
Here we go. Here they come again. Donato scores! It's a hat trick! Ryan Donato!
These days, hat tricks go beyond hockey. They can celebrate 3 of almost anything. And to think, it all came about because of Alex Coletta's hat.
Chicago sports fans, not only for the Blackhawks, they want their team to win, and they want them to play well. And the Blackhawks were always a team that pleased the crowd.
All I want to say is the stereotype of who a Chicagoan is, that's the Blackhawk fan. You know, they, them, and, you know, this, and, you know, I'm from Cicero. Like, it is so blue collar, the hockey fans. And that, to me, is just makes it real.
Well, of all the sports fans in Chicago, I'd say the Blackhawks fans are the most loyal by far. Maybe more so than any team in the city, the Blackhawks represent the working class nature of the city.
I do remember going to the first game. I remember being in awe of walking into the old Chicago Stadium and seeing the brilliant ice lit up. I had never seen professional sports before, so I walked into the stadium with my father at about the age of 12 and just in awe of the whole experience.
My dad got tickets in the second balcony. I got to see an original 6 team, the Detroit Red Wings, and Hawks won 4-2. I remember because Stan Mikita had 2 goals that game, and it was my first game ever, so it was a special experience to see him win.
I got to go down to Chicago Stadium a couple times, and it was really amazing because back then in the 1960s, Blackhawks were about as hot a ticket as there was in town.
I remember my brother John bringing me. I was young, I think I was like 8 or 9, and it was really exciting. It was also a special time for me and my brother, you know. He was 5 years older, so we didn't have a lot to talk about. But we had the Blackhawks.
From frozen ponds to packed arenas, hockey, like many sports, has a way of bringing people together. Different backgrounds, different stories, but all chasing the same puck, sharing the same game. You know what? It's like they say sometimes, man. The simplest things connect us the most.
There were so many exciting times through the course of my public address announcing. I mean, of course, one of it was the All-Star game, which came here in Chicago right after the first Mideast War broke out. And the fans were just very energetic and patriotic, and the national anthem was just very stirring.
One of the truly unique traditions in sports only happens right here in Chicago. Blackhawks fans cheered throughout the entire national anthem.
The cheering of the crowd and the volume at which Wayne Messmer used to sing the anthem and Jim Cornelison does now reaches such a crescendo that it's known worldwide. It's not just known league-wide. The anthem in Chicago is a very, very special moment.
In any other place, fans cheering during the national anthem would be seen as disrespectful, but in Chicago, somehow it's the ultimate tribute.
552, including the playoffs. That's the total number of consecutive games that Hawks goalie Glenn Hall played. That's a record that will never be broken.
Of course, he played every game. In the days when the goalies, they only had dressed one goalie, and without wearing a mask.
In those days, they only had the one goalkeeper, so you simply played. I remember I had a reaction to penicillin, and I remember that having difficulty getting the eyes open, so I very nearly missed a game during that time.
Now all the teams carry two goalies and gives others some relief.
The fact that the Hawks missed the playoffs didn't stop the voters from recognizing Hall's fine work in the Chicago Nets, and he was named the All-Star goaltender.
Glenn Hall, along with Tony Esposito, is also widely credited with evolving the butterfly save.
Butterfly is just to guard the goal. They go into like a spread, you know, and Glenn Hall was the first to do that.
I was kind of surprised he goes down and came back up real quick. That was the thing that got me, because normally at that time everybody stood up, but he went down, covered the angles.
Perhaps the most interesting aspect of all of these components in the butterfly style is, okay, you can drop so that your head is the same height as the crossbar, but that's going to put your face in play for a lot of pucks. And that really led to the creation of the goal mask, because otherwise it was suicidal to play the position.
Your number one job was to stay alive. The second one was to stop the puck. And we looked at it in that order.
Goalies are, as you know, crazy, or at minimum peculiar. They're always tinkering on, how do I take this to the next level? Tony took a mask that was very flat against his face and put little iron cages on the eye holes because he was always getting dinged on the orbital socket.
I got the original one in '69, and then about 75 or 6, I made an adjustment. What happened was I was getting hit a lot. I never did anything to improve my equipment until I got hurt.
A deflection, and it looked like he would beat Esposito, but Tony O making an amazing save.
Tony Esposito still holds franchise records for wins, saves, games in goal, shutouts, and minutes played.
From year one, Blackhawk games were not just about skating fast. They were battlegrounds. Plenty of blood painted the ice in the early decades of Hawks history. So maybe it's not quite a coincidence that the first ever blood bank invented in the United States was created right here at Cook County Hospital.
Flash forward to 1969. Tony Esposito begins to flourish in Chicago when rookies Keith Magnuson and Cliff Corral arrive. Defenseman Magnuson led the charge to a whole new level of physical play. No helmet, no hesitation, all heart. If there was a fight to be had, Maggie was in the middle of it. He might have had something to do with the fact that NHL teams started keeping their own dentists on the sidelines for every game.
So my dad was really fortunate that he never played one day in the minor leagues. The veteran team that was around him, Bobby Hull, Dennis Hull, Stan Mikita, were really excited to have this young guy who was tough, but who could also play. And my dad had done a little bit of fighting in junior, but not as much as he was about to do. So he practiced karate in the summer and got his fists ready for training camp. And in the training camp, he fought every tough guy on every team that they played in the preseason. And he won some, lost some, but Coach Billy Ray loved his attitude. That year, 69-70, was also a special season for the Blackhawks as a franchise because the year before, they were last place in the league. They went from last place to first place my dad's rookie year. So Cliff Corral made the jump along with Tony Esposito. And so those three rookies were instrumental in that turnaround. Cliff found great chemistry with Stan Mikita on his wing, and then Tony Esposito became Tony O and set the rookie record for 15 shutouts as a rookie goaltender. My dad paired up with Doug Jarrett on defense, and so that was my dad's new job as a policeman, and one that he took very seriously.
140. The sound in decibels put out by the United Center's goal horn, the NHL's first. Team owner Bill Wirtz had a yacht with a horn loud enough to be heard along the shoreline of Lake Michigan. Back in the early 70s, he decided to install a similar horn, actually 4 separate 2-foot-long horns, inside Chicago Stadium.
And it became a huge ad because the place was loud anyway. And when a puck went in the net for the Blackhawks, I mean, that thing going off really set people off. So it added to the experience. The Blackhawks were the first team to do that.
Daryl Sutter over the line, shoots, he scores! Sutter! After Batterman saved the day at one end, Sutter scores at the other end, 1-1.
The Blackhawks' use of a horn marking every home team goal sparked a trend that spread to every arena in the NHL. Over the years, the horn has played different sequences and has been paired with sirens and organ themes and pop music. So let's hear it for this brash, 100-pound behemoth, another Blackhawks first.
And now, we go from sea captain to team captain. You know, it feels appropriate to stand next to the statue of John Baptiste Point du Sable, Chicago's first non-native permanent settler, when we talk about another Chicago first. Dirk Graham happens to be the first black person to be a captain of a National Hockey League team. Brother Dirk, man, he wore the C on his chest for 6 years. Now, he happens to be from about 1,000 miles that way in Saskatchewan, but nonetheless, he has put on for Chicago. He led us to the Stanley Cup Finals in 1992, where in Game 4, he had a hat trick.
Hawks get to the finals. The first 3 games go to the Pittsburgh Penguins. Before Game 4, Dirk Graham, captain of the team, stands up and says, "Boys, I'm going to play the game of my life tonight. Follow me. Let's go. We're going to get this game." Dirk Graham goes out and scores a hat trick in the stadium. Phenomenal performance. Unfortunately, Pittsburgh won the game. That was one of my favorite hat tricks for sure.
"36. Number of captains skating for the Blackhawks since 1926. The biggest names to wear the C: Pierre Pilote, Ed Litzenberger, Dennis Savard, Chris Chelios, Jonathan Taves, and Jim Belushi, the celebrity captain who helped lead the 91-92 team to the Stanley Cup Finals.
Well, every team in the league has selected an honorary captain, and Jim Belushi has been given that distinction by the Chicago Blackhawks.
Yeah, it was a real honor to be on the ice with Stan Mikita and Chelios and receiving that sweater. I felt it was a little above me, but they honored me, and I owned it that year. Wow, look at that. That's a great clip, man. Throwing a check into Chelios.
Chelly, not only with the players on the Hawks, but with guys in other teams, he was very respected. He had that stature with players that's rare. Whatever he possessed, and you could see it when he played on the Olympic teams as well. Maybe because in many ways he was probably the greatest American-born player. From what I can tell, the American-born players carry a little bit of a chip on their shoulder because the NHL is still very much a Canadian-driven game, given the athletes in the league. So in many ways, I think the American-born players feel they almost have more to prove.
Cementing his reputation as one of the toughest and most tenacious defensemen the team has ever seen, Chris Chelios spent more time in the penalty box than any other Blackhawk in history.
I think he would trade me to have his jersey retired up there. I think he thinks he would have to die to get it up there. So he is going to go to heaven, I think, when this happens.
Chelios' number 7 is one of just 9 numbers retired by the Blackhawks.
How you guys doing? Okay. I'm excited about where we're heading. I love the group already, and I know what's coming before us. You know, the leadership group that was here before us, the success that's been here. I'm excited to get started.
In the early days of the league, Canadians dominated every NHL roster. In fact, all the way up until like the 1920s, most teams only had a few U.S. players.
It was very rare to have even one American player, maybe 2. But Frederick McLaughlin, who was the first owner of the team, said the heck with that. He may have been the father of the rivalry, saying, I'm sure American players can compete at this level. We have to give them the opportunity.
Like Chicago's secret underground streets, these American-born players became the Blackhawks' secret weapon. They didn't just take up roster spots either. No, they played a pivotal role in the Hawks winning 2 Stanley Cups. Soon after, C was sewn on the sweater of John Mariucci. He's the first American-born player to become a captain of an NHL team. The success of those early American players led the way for future Blackhawk stars like Chris Chelios, Eddie Olczyk, and of course, Patrick Kane.
3:30 p.m. Puck drop on the 19th of March, 1933. Blackhawks versus Red Wings, the NHL's first ever matinee game. The Hawks made history at Chicago Stadium that Sunday, facing Detroit for an afternoon contest in front of 6,000 fans for a game that faced off at 3:30 instead of 8:30. The Blackhawks were not very good that year, but in 1934, they beat these same Red Wings to win the Stanley Cup. The introduction of matinee games in the NHL brought the speed and drama of hockey to daytime audiences, opening the sport to young fans.
Help to the back. O'Donia shot deflected. Scramble. They score! Bowman 3-2 with less than a minute to go.
Anytime you've got an important game with 2 of the original 6, it's cool. It just is, because there's so much history.
In another original 6 game, decades earlier, the Blackhawks faced off against the New York Rangers on January 5th, 1957. Over 5 million viewers tuned into the CBS network for the first nationally televised NHL game in U.S. history. For the Blackhawks, it was more than just a game. It was a turning point. Struggling with attendance and visibility, the national broadcast gave Chicago a rare spotlight, connecting the team with fans far beyond the arena.
I think the fact that the Hawks were on the first national television broadcast speaks to the fact of the original 6 and why I think it's still a big deal to have a game against Toronto or Chicago or Boston or Montreal. You know, those are big name teams, and they still are to this day. You know, it speaks to the legend that the Blackhawks are.
Yeah, you grow up and you become a part of this team, and there's no place else that I would have rather spent most of my career, and very fortunate and grateful that it was here in Chicago with the Hawks.
You know, 100 years in, and hopefully the next 100 is just as much fun.
For 100 years, the Chicago Blackhawks have been more than just a hockey team. They've been pioneers.
From breaking new ground in player development to redefining the fan experience, the Blackhawks have never, ever been content to follow. They've led with bold decisions, enduring rivalries, and a legacy built on both triumph and transformation. This team has left an indelible mark on the NHL. As they step into their second century, the Blackhawks carry with them not just a rich history, but the spirit of innovation that makes them legends.